Hello everyone and welcome again to my How To Education channel. As I promised you on Thursday, today we're gonna continue with the economics content. How to Ace Economics Demand and Supply Applications Part 1. After watching this video, don't forget to leave me your feedback. Throughout the last 3 lectures, we worked under the assumption that markets are free and operate with no government intervention. Now, it is time to study some government interventions in the market, either to prevent the price of a good or service from rising too high, or to prevent the price of a good or service from falling too low. These government interventions are what we call price controls. There are mainly 2 forms of price controls: price ceilings and price floors. A price ceiling is the maximum price that the producer, supplier, or seller is allowed to charge for a certain product or service. The government imposes price ceilings in order to keep some essential goods or services accessible to the population. In order to properly describe the process of price ceiling and its advantages and disadvantages, let us take the example of rent and explain it according to the demand and supply mechanism. It is no secret to anyone that throughout the years, cities and towns have grown and modernized due to the many new buildings and constructions all around. It is also not a secret that businesses have expanded and that incomes have risen. In addition to this modernization, people's preferences could also have changed throughout the years. All of these changes might cause an increase in the demand of housing for rent. Let's take a look at the upcoming situation. The following table depicts each monthly rent price available, the number of houses available for each option of rent, as in the quantity supplied, and the 2 sets of quantity demanded, one of them before all of the mentioned changes took place, and the other one after all of the mentioned changes took place. We can see from the following graph that the demand curve is D0 and the supply curve is S0. We can also see that the demand shifted from D0 to D1, while the supply curve stayed the same. The original equilibrium was the intersection between D0 and S0, so E0, and the new equilibrium is the intersection between D1 and S0, so E1. The original equilibrium of the previous graph is at the intersection of the supply curve and the demand curve that represented the time before all of these changes took place. The equilibrium price was $500 and the equilibrium quantity was 15,000 units of available houses. The effect of increased growth, higher income, or a change in tastes is a shift of the demand curve for rental housing to the right. In this market, the new equilibrium is at the intersection of the supply curve and the demand curve that represented the time after all of these changes took place. The equilibrium price increased to $600 and the equilibrium quantity increased to 17,000 units of available houses. Now, suppose that $600 is unaffordable to some people, and the government decides to stipulate a rent price ceiling of $500, which was the original equilibrium. Nevertheless, the problem here is that the mentioned changes that shifted the demand curve to the right are still there. That is, the equilibrium price is still $600. At the price of $500, the quantity supplied remains at the same 15,000 rental units, but the quantity demanded goes from 15,000 units to 19,000 units. In other words, the quantity demanded exceeds the quantity supplied, so there is a shortage of rental housing. In addition, Even though the price ceiling was intended to help renters, there are fewer apartments rented under the price ceiling of $500 than would be the case at $600. Price ceilings are meant to keep prices low for those who need the product. However, when this mechanism ends up keeping the market price below the equilibrium level, quantity demanded exceeds quantity supplied, and thus a shortage occurs. The consumers that actually had the chance to buy the product at that lower price will benefit, but the sellers and producers will definitely suffer, just like those who were not able to purchase the product at all. It is not unlikely that the quality of the product or service will suffer as well. A price floor is the lowest price that the consumer is allowed to pay for a certain product or service. The government imposes price floors in order to make sure that the market price of a good or service does not fall below a level that would make it impossible for the product to continue existing. In order to properly describe the process of price floor and its advantages and disadvantages, let us go over two examples and explain them according to the demand and supply mechanism. A perfect example of a price floor description would be the minimum wage. The minimum wage law is based on the concept that someone working full-time should be able to afford a basic standard of living. That is, a person cannot work full-time and have to find other ways to make money outside of work hours because he or she is earning less than the minimum needed in order to survive. As the cost of living rises over time, the government must increase the minimum wage. Due to its supportive nature, price floors are sometimes called price supports. That is, they support a price by not letting it fall below a certain level. Price supports mainly function through a more direct form of government intervention. That is, the government enters the market and buys up the product, thus increasing the demand in order to keep prices higher than they would have been. Take a look at the following graph before going over the explanation in the next pages. The previous graph describes a certain government intervention program in order to ensure a price above the equilibrium for wheat in Europe. In the absence of government intervention, the price would adjust so that the quantity supplied would equal to the quantity demanded at the equilibrium point E0 with price P0 and quantity Q0. However, through these government interventions, the price is actually PF, higher than P0. The result is a surplus, since quantity supplied is higher than quantity demanded at that point. Price floors are meant to keep prices higher to help those who need to sell the product. However, when this mechanism ends up keeping the market price above the equilibrium level, quantity supplied exceeds quantity demanded, and a surplus occurs. The sellers that actually had the chance to sell the product at that higher price will benefit, but the consumers might definitely suffer, just like the sellers who were not able to sell the product at all. This is it from economics for this week, but if you have reached the end of this video, it is because the content was helpful to you somehow. If this is the case, don't forget to give your friends and acquaintances the opportunity to have access to these videos by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing to this channel. We will be continuing with the second part of this lecture on Wednesday, but before that, I will see you all on Monday with some new derivative rules. Thank you so much.